Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, and of course, Merry Christmas, everyone, for those who celebrate. It is, I believe, Christmas Eve, which is the most appropriate time. Yeah, I think this is going out on the 24th of December, which could not be a more appropriate date for a podcast of this nature to release, since most of this movie is set during the 24th.
Happy Christmas Eve to all that celebrate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, what a great way to be... Well, I was going to say, what a great way to be celebrating Christmas Eve than Muppet's Christmas Carol.
Yeah, do you think... Because surely no one's like... And if you are, comment, email. But no one's, sat... no one's put this on like a fucking, vinyl record. And is sat listening to it, are they? So, maybe you're travelling somewhere. Mm-hmm. For Christmas, and you're listening to us in that form. In which case, I hope you're excited for wherever you're going, and Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
I don't know. From our point of view, it's fucking from my point of view, it's 6 a.m. on a November Saturday. But still, I love you. I want you to know that, people.
Yeah, I think with a Christmas podcast, there's always that element of most people are probably going to hear this a week later. I think that's the reality of it. But if you are traveling, you put this on, or you're chopping up your vegetables for your Christmas dinner, you're doing prep, and you just got it on in the background, or you're just washing some dishes, or just whatever you're doing, just wrapping some presents, and you got this on the background, or whatever. We appreciate you. Hope you're having a good Christmas. Hope your family haven't driven you to murder quite yet. As is the Christmas tradition around my old home.
Here's a family related thing, Dan.
Go on.
Just snip it in there. This is something that one of my family members did recently. We've been doing various house stuff, and that's involved a lot of clearing out. And there was a TV sized, but not like a big TV sized, glass TV unit with 2 levels, so 3 panels of glass in, one at the very bottom, one in the middle, and one at the top. So you'd put your TV on the top, and on the 2 below you'd put DVD players or fucking VHSs, because apparently we're in the 90s, your Skybox, whatever. A glass TV unit, right? And we're clearing it out, and my mum says, "Oh, you should keep that, because you know what you could put on that." That was the sentence, Dan. We won't play this game for long because you're never going to get it. Do you want to take 3 quick guesses at what my mum was suggesting we put on this glass TV unit?
I mean, other than a TV.
Right, there you go. Yeah, that's the main thing. No, wasn't a TV, Dan. Tumble dryer. What the fuck was she talking about?
Sorry? Tumble dryer?
Yeah.
Glass?
Yeah, that was my reaction. Dan.
So, but wait, no, I've got questions.
It's even. I don't think you're even picturing it. Hold on, we'll ask you questions, and I'm just going to get up and I'm going to send you a photo of this thing.
But it's glass, yeah. Yeah. So my question, just immediately is glass would not hold the weight of a tumble dryer. TVs are, especially modern flat screen TVs, fairly light, and that's allowed these sorts of stands to be less robust than they used to be. Unless this is a very old one for a giant old TV that was had a big thing sticking out the back and was huge, but unless if it's for a modern TV, unless I've misunderstood Chris sent me the image. Let me have a look.
No, you haven't, Dan. You haven't at all. Have a look at the image. It's very dusty because of what was put on it, but still.
Let's have a look. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that, Chris, what you've got right there is the exact same TV stand we had in my house. And it is, I will tell you this, the worst thing I ever bought, because it is... no item I've ever owned attracts dust quite like that item.
Well, yeah, you only have to look at the state of ours, but yeah.
Yeah. This is basically the first option when you Google TV stand on... put TV stand into Amazon. This is the first one that comes up. This is standard. This is every uni student's first TV stand once they get a place of their own. But
but it's not.
It would crumble.
It's not a fucking tumble dryer stand, is it?
It wouldn't even. It would crumble under the weight of a tumble dryer. It would smash to pieces, fall apart, and then the tumble dryer would hit the ground. It would not hold up the weight of a tumble dryer. I do not believe. Not for a second.
Yeah.
Madness.
Yeah. Madness. So there you go. That's family, is what I'm saying, I guess.
Anyway, this week, for listeners who are like, what is this podcast about? This is the podcast where we watch old movies and decide if they're still any good. This week, for Christmas, for our Christmas episode, we're doing Muppet's Christmas Carol. Finally, for some context, for those of you who don't know, I was going to do this on the podcast about 2 years ago, and then we ended up doing the Santa Claus trilogy. I was like, that's okay. I'll only have to wait 12 months and we'll do Muppet's Christmas Carol. 12 months passed by. Couldn't do it then because we were doing a weird joke where we were doing movies that were linked to the movie before, but not really. We were pretending like we were going to do sequels, but then we weren't doing sequels, and it led to us making some really weird choices, and we missed the Christmas options for that. And then this year, third attempt, 2 years since I was originally going to pick this, and fucking the Santa Claus trilogy waylaid me. We are finally here doing Muppet's Christmas Carol, which I'm excited to do for 2 reasons. One, genuinely one of my favourite Christmas movies of all time. Top 3, I think. Along with Gremlins.
What are your other 2?
Gremlins and Die Hard, I think. Yeah, Gremlins and Die Hard, I think. Yeah, it's up there with those 2. So, like, you know, big deal for me, this movie. Watch it, you know, maybe not every year, but every other year probably. Like, the last time I saw this was probably only 2 years ago. Like, probably the year we did the Santa Claus. Like, I may not have watched it last year knowing we were probably going to tackle it this year, but like, I pretty much watch it every year, every other year. It's a classic for me. I'm going to be very biased when we talk about this movie. I'm going to find it very hard to be objective about this movie because I love this movie dearly. I have done since I was a kid. Always been a huge Muppets fan, and it's, you know, one of the greatest stories ever told, as told by characters I adore. So this is like just a home run out of the gate for Dan. I don't remember the very first time I saw this movie, but I remember some thoughts I had about the movie when I first saw the movie because I was very young, but I don't remember the actual first sit down to watch the movie. I suspect I just came across it on television and watched it because I liked the Muppets. But it's been a big part of my life ever since. I've never really not watched this movie. I don't think there's ever been a big gap in my life where I didn't watch it for, like, you know, a decade. Like, I feel like I always watch this movie every couple of years. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to be doing it today. I know it fairly well. So again, this is not going to be an unbiased review from me, but that's one of the reasons I'm excited to do this movie. The other reason, because I said there were 2 main ones, the other one is, of course, because Chris, my delightful co-host, has, I believe, not seen this movie before. So this was your first ever experience watching Muppet's Christmas Carol. So I've got to ask the obvious immediate question, because obviously you don't have any history with the film. What was your first screening of it like?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. Because I just, you know, sat down of an evening. It wasn't last night; it was the night before. And you know, some of this is linked to wider thought stuff, but to kind of contextualize it, because it is weird. I realised watching it. There's 2, I think, pieces of contextualizing for me. One, I've never seen the movie before, but I am very familiar with A Christmas Carol, which does make a difference watching this, which we'll talk about. Yeah. There is some familiarity there. I mean, obviously, most people are familiar with A Christmas Carol, and you know, I was in a production of it. I was Portly Gentleman number 2. Not even the first larger man.
I think the good thing about that is, like, you know, who wants to learn all those lines? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And
A Christmas Carol is a verbose piece, I would argue.
Yeah, and I did not. I think it's fair to say sometimes that as Dan will attest to, sometimes love them to bits, the people. And I feel a real affinity with the amateur dramatics group, the Amdram group that I do stuff with. But it's definitely fair to say that sometimes I'm in something because the person asks me to audition and I can't think of a good reason to get out of it. Sometimes I'm very enthusiastic. Other times I'm Portly Gentleman number 2. And I remember with A Christmas Carol, it was a particularly busy time, and I was particularly resentful because it was basically like a bit part, like I was, a Christmas Carol and a ghost. There were two amazing moments. One was the moment where I really just, in quite a rude way for me, just lost my who gives a fuck. And there was a guy that claimed he couldn't learn all his lines because he was writing a novel or something. Maybe he was writing a thesis. That's probably doing him a disservice. I think he was doing a degree, but he couldn't do it. Like, so I was given all his lines for like a ship scene. I was a captain. I couldn't really fucking work it out, and he was like, and he said, "Oh yeah, I just can't do it," and I just went, "Yeah, well, we've all got stuff going on, haven't we?" That's the rudest I've ever seen you. And then the other bit was there was a scene where, because I didn't know what the fuck was going on in that. Like I say, it was a boat, but there was a scene where a group of us were ghosts, and Scrooge was walking through the graveyard, and the ghosts were all saying stuff to him. And on the second night, we started playing a game where we would choose like a style to say the lines in. So it would be like spooky. So we'd all be like, "Ooh, Ebenezer," and then it would be like loud. I can't remember all of them, but we did it for 4 nights, and it started getting more and more extreme. And then the fifth night, it was Cockney, and one of the ghosts was like, "Hello, Scrooge, what are you up to, me old son?" Like he just changed the line. And just randomly in A Christmas Carol, a ghost spoke like a market trader, and we all got a market from the director.
Yeah, I was going to say a market trader from probably a couple of 100 years later.
And we all got a bollocking from the director. We weren't allowed to play that game anymore. But yeah, anyway,
that makes sense. That makes sense to me.
So yeah, I've got memories connected to A Christmas Carol.
But also familiarity with the text, which obviously this particular movie does treat with a surprising maybe amount of reverence, depending on your perspective.
Yeah. So, Portly Gentlemen 1 and 2 are the charity collectors. Mm-hmm. And during those scenes, I was like, those are my lines.
Right?
That's weird.
Yeah,
it was amazing. And then, but Muppets wise, I've only ever seen the Jason Segel, the Muppets movie, which you forced me to watch. And I think listeners will know, regular listeners will know that when I say you forced me to watch, I probably mean that quite literally, and I do. And I really enjoyed that movie.
It's a great movie,
but it's not this era. And I saw a bunch of episodes of the sort of the Muppets, The Office sort of spoof that they did.
Oh yeah, that was fun. That was a bit weird, but it was very funny. It didn't really represent the Muppets in their most traditional sense, but it was still quite a fun, weird show.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed that for sure. So yeah, it was just bizarre to watch it. So headline thoughts. Mm-hmm. In terms of my first experience watching it, I was absolutely. I mean, it's a work of genius. I was bowled over by watching it going, this is a really good Muppets movie, and it's also a really good, incredibly faithful Christmas Carol adaptation. Mm-hmm. How have they done both? It's a fucking miracle. And I think one of the ways they've done both is they've not really fucked with the story. They've not really fucked with a lot of Scrooge's dialogue and what happens. Mm-hmm. It's all Muppets, and there's Muppets humour littered throughout. But a lot of the Muppets humour comes in the form of jokes. Like one of my favourite ones, it's the American way. This is actually set in England. It's the British way.
Yeah, incredible joke.
Great gag.
Yeah, it's a great gag.
But not a gag that is incredibly Muppets, but takes I think it's a little bit longer than what I've just said, but it doesn't interrupt. It's happening during the Christmas caroling of it all. It's happening during the flashback. It is both things, and that is the thing I was bowled over with the most. Obviously, I assume. Well, I didn't know. I don't assume. I know because I've heard people say it. Obviously, at its heart is an incredible performance by Michael Caine, where he is, not playing to the Muppets, but just playing to actors and delivering a truly astounding performance in both. Well, in all facets of Scrooge, in miserable Scrooge, happy Scrooge, and in between Scrooge. Fucking hell, the scenes where he's watching, like, Tiny Tim and all of that sort of stuff. Yes. I mean, my God, it's just phenomenal, and that goes a long way as well. The music's interesting because the songs were good, but I could not, with the exception potentially of Marley. And Marley, like, I can't sing you any other songs. Yeah. And I watched it 2 days ago. So I don't think the songs are inherently catchy and for anyone sat there going, the songs are classics, I can sing them all. I suspect you watch it every other year. And that's why. And if I did, I'd be able to sing you the songs. Yeah. But I don't think they are. No, I don't think they are the biggest part of it. I'm sorry.
No, I was agreeing with you. I think that's true. As someone who adores this movie, I don't think the songs are as classic as people indicate they are. I do think people give the songs more credit than they require. They are one of the weaker elements of what is a very good movie. And weaker doesn't mean bad. It just means everything around it is elevating these songs, not the other way around.
Yeah, and I don't think it has, like I said, and we did it last week when we looked at the number of showings this film has at the Prince Charles, and most of them were sing-alongs, but I don't think this film has a circle of life, the way that Circle of Life in The Lion King, The Lion King's the golden standard because it's got like thousands of those songs in, or a Let It Go from Frozen. It's not got a song that has permeated pop culture because it is so insanely catching and so, is it Aladdin with A Brave New World? It hasn't got its version of that. But equally, I don't think the songs are disruptive. I don't think the songs interrupt the story. I don't think you're sat there going, oh, that's another song, partly because the approach to the songs are kind of the Hamilton approach of the songs are the dialogue to the film. So, and maybe that's also one of the reasons there's no earworms, because it's serving the place of dialogue, and I would rather it serve the place of dialogue, to be honest. And yeah, the whole thing, my big headline thought, and in some ways my main thought, because all of the great, narrative choices were in A Christmas Carol to begin with. That's not a criticism. That's not me saying they didn't do a lot of work. They did an insane amount of work, and the cinematography is brilliant, and all the things we're going to talk about. But it's almost hard to. I almost watched it going, I don't really know what to say, because it's an amazing Muppets movie, but I don't want to just sit here and repeat jokes. But also, it's an amazing structure because it's so classic, and it's A Christmas Carol, and I felt nostalgia and Christmas warmth for a film I've never seen before, in part because it's like, it's the ghosts and all that sort of stuff. And still chuckling, I think I told it at the end of last week's episode, but still chuckling at the fact that when my cousin saw that production of A Christmas Carol that I was in, he was very confused as to why there was one Marley, and then realised that there's only two Marleys in the Muppets version. He was like, oh yeah, no, that's not, there is only one Marley, it's just they had two. And we will talk about things like the amazing puppetry, the angles, the way the film is shot on so many low angles, and the way I assume, I don't know for sure because I don't know the Muppets well enough, but I assume the ghosts, with the exceptions of the Marleys, the three ghosts, your big hitters, past, present, and future, I assume they weren't existing Muppets.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, which again is a genius choice. So we'll talk about all of that stuff. But my headline would be, from watching it for the first time, I was absolutely bowled over by how it manages to be both a phenomenal Muppets movie and a phenomenal adaptation of A Christmas Carol. And obviously, Michael Caine.
Yeah.
my summary, I would say.
Yeah, and I think rewatching it with sort of a critical eye, I found it very hard to sort of like... Well, I found it hard to be objective about this movie full stop. I think it's just very difficult when the movie is this entrenched in your brain. It's just tricky to sort of separate your thoughts, But I think basically a lot of your headline thoughts are a lot of my headline thoughts. Obviously the most impressive parts of the movie are without a doubt Michael Caine, and the many very smart choices that were made early on in this production that I really do think made the difference, such as deciding to lift so much of the dialogue from the original text, choosing to have a narrator, having Charles Dickens narrate the story, allowing them to leave many of the book's prose in the script, because there's, obviously normally when you adapt something, the thing that is automatically lost when you translate to film is the prose, because of course you don't need to describe the room or where a character walked or how they were feeling, because that's, you're telling that story in a different medium, and you're required to communicate that information in different ways. And the thing that one of the things that is one of the most beautiful parts of reading a book is the artistry of the prose, which is a real skill. And I think, you often lose that in a book adaptation. You're still getting the story, but you're losing the writing, so to speak, the way in which the things were described and the way in which it was told. And I think when you just go, well, we'll have the author. Sorry? Yeah, we'll just have the author, and they'll just say it. They'll just say the things that are in the book. Oh yeah, that's really smart. Yeah, because you can only do that in this sort of adaptation, because it's, a quote unquote not serious adaptation, in the sense of it is not slavishly serious to the source material. It's happy to make small adjustments here and there for the sake of a bit of a comedic beat or whatever, and it's got a sort of a slightly lighter tone because it's aimed more at children. Therefore you can get away with having Gonzo be like, no, I'm Charles Dickens, and Rizzo be like, fuck off. No, you're not. No, I'm Charles Dickens. I'm an omniscient. I'm the author. I know these things. That's such a great idea, and that remains that small decision made early on has a huge impact on the quality of this film, and Michael Caine's decision. And I've got something I'll quickly read on this, because this is just one of those things. This is technically from the trivia, but it's right. Before production began, Michael Caine told producer and director Brian Henson, "I'm going to play this movie like I'm working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. I will not.
He did.
He did. I will never wink. I will never do anything Muppety. I am going to play Scrooge as if it's an utterly dramatic role, and there are no puppets around me." That choice, it's just the right decision. And I think this movie is like, half of its genius comes before cameras are rolling, just by the calls they made when it came to which characters were going to be played by which Muppets, where they were going to do Muppet stuff. And I don't just mean Muppet-style comedy. I mean actual references to the Muppets. They did it in the places where it was least intrusive. The reason there are two Marleys is because I believe one of the lines from the original book is Scrooge saying that Marley always criticised him. Well, guess what? Statler and Waldorf spent their entire career in the Muppets criticising the Muppets as they tried to do the show. That's the most perfect piece of casting you could possibly imagine, having Statler and Waldorf play play the Marleys. So then you're splitting the character. Does that change anything? No. Does that make a ton of sense from a Muppet perspective? Yes, it does. Having Kermit play Bob Cratchit and Miss Piggy play his wife, whose name I always forget. Genius. And also answering the eternal question of what kind of weird hybrid children would a pig and a frog have. Well, the answer is they wouldn't. The boys would be frogs. The girls would be pigs. Of course. Yeah, of course. What else would it be? There are two genders in the Muppet world, Chris: frog or pig. So yeah, it's It's, little things like that are like, and these things were all decided before they rolled a frame, and I think a lot of that is really what makes this work for me. But it's moments like that really make it sing, because and also the choice from a script perspective just to be so faithful, just to be so obscenely faithful to the source material. It's like, it is crazy how much they were willing to risk boring children. And it is a risk. Children might be bored by this. So in terms of criticisms, though, I mean, I really do only have two, and they're pretty light. One is that I do think the music is... There are basically 3 songs I love, and the rest I'm like, yeah, they're fine.
So what's the third? Marley and Marley, Ebenezer Scrooge, and what's the third one?
So it's Marley and Marley. I do love Scrooge. That's actually not in my top 3. That's probably 4. So Marley and Marley is up in the top 3. One More Sleep Till Christmas. Kermit sings right up, pretty much up top. That's that melody that do 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 that one more sleep till Christmas. Like, I'll never get that out of my head. That's going to be in my head till the end of time. And then of course the other one is It Feels Like Christmas, the one with the Ghost of Christmas Present. It's very jolly, very Christmassy, just perfectly positioned, sang beautifully, super fun, tons of energy. It comes at the turning point when Scrooge is starting to not be Scrooge anymore. It's got the moment one of my favorite visuals in the entire movie, which is when the Ghost of Christmas Present starts sort of doing a little bit of a weird dance with his arms, and Scrooge joins in. Like, it's the first big hint that Scrooge is changing. The first very, very overt hint that the change is working, because you can't imagine Scrooge from earlier in the movie doing anything of the sort. I love that. So those are my favorites, but a lot of the songs are quite forgettable, in my opinion. Or maybe not forgettable, but like, I think they wash over you is probably a better way to describe it. They lack a good hook that keeps them in your brain, in my opinion. And I'm sure I'll be shot for saying that. I'm sure I'll be put to death, because I know fans of this movie are very, very passionate, and we'll talk about one element of that passion later. Anyone who's a big fan of this movie and who's come to this podcast already knows what we're going to be talking about later. Yes, we will be talking about When Love Is Gone. Yes, we watched the version with it in. Please, you can put your knives down. It's okay. We watched the right version.
I really like that. I like that. So, like, I can't hum the tune, but I liked that. I was watching that song going, Why? I mean, we'll talk about it, but I was watching that song going, because I knew that was what was cut, because it's also on Disney as a deleted scene.
Yes, it is.
So I was like, okay, well, that's what's cut. And I was watching it going, I don't know why you would cut this. It's a really nice, powerful moment. But yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it.
Yeah. So I think, in terms of overall thoughts, still love this movie. Still a great movie. Big shocker. It's a big recommend. You should watch it. You should watch every Christmas. Why not? But in terms of other criticisms, the other one I had was, I do worry. My second criticism, and it's the only real, we can maybe have this as a start of a discussion point. And this is just because of the way the movie is structured, and obviously there are bits missing from the book and some of the length. Do you think Scrooge has a lot of scenes where he's like, I don't want to see any more, Spirit. This is too sad. I'm feeling things and I don't like it. There's several scenes of that, and then he's just different without a sort of light bulb moment, so to speak. A clear, defined moment when he changes. It's just lots of little things happen. Do you think that for a movie is sort of, I don't want to say simplified, because I think that would be an insult to this script. I think the script is actually really clever, but with a slightly condensed, simplified version of Scrooge's arc, because we're also doing Muppet stuff and also doing the Christmas Carol, but it's also, as a book, it's obviously longer than the length of this movie. I know it's a novella. I know it's only 30,000 words, but I think read aloud, I think the audiobook is 3 or 4 hours. So I read that in my research. So we're already at 1/3 of its length, or maybe half of its length. So do you think, Chris, that that it's we give him a bunch of reasons to change in a row without him showing any demonstrating any change, and then he does the song with Christmas Present, and then suddenly he's smiling and he's doing the dance, and you can see that shift happening in him there. Do you think that happens a bit suddenly, or do you think they earn that through all the smaller choices?
I think the trouble is all of those sorts of things happen quite suddenly. Like, there's also the speed in which he agrees to go with this fucking creepy ghost of Christmas past, where he's essentially
God.
No, all right then. Like, instantly they're flying through the air, and he's like, So I think that's a slight, there is a slight, it's 90 minutes element to it. But also, I think they do, especially in the song that's cut, they do quite a lot of legwork in the past to show him realizing, what has happened and the mistakes that he has made, and he's begging to leave Christmas past. There is I was surprised at how quick a turn that was, because in my head. And I think, without knowing for sure, because I don't know all the adaptations that well, but in my head, if you say to me, when's the turning point for Scrooge, mostly I would go, Christmas future. He really changes his mind at Christmas future. In this, he kind of really changes his mind in Christmas present.
Yes, right, exactly.
But I don't think it. Yes, I agree that happens quite quickly. I don't think it's necessarily, and neither do you. You're saying it's a brilliant movie. These are, slightly above nitpicks, but they're not, they don't ruin the movie.
No.
That's not what you're saying.
No, and I appreciate you qualifying that, because, it's for the sake of a discussion. If someone said, what are your criticisms of this movie, as a person reviewing it, okay, I don't think all of the songs are bangers, and some of the character work happens a bit quick. That's basically the most I can come up with.
but you know what? You know why it's not a big issue? Because of fucking Michael Caine.
Right.
Because when you see him looking around at the school, when you see him looking at him and his girlfriend breaking up, which, by the way, do other adaptations return? Like, why does... and I suppose it's not the done thing back in the day. It's not that he could be like, I'll look her up on Facebook. But I'm sat there watching that going, it's weird how adaptations don't, including this one, hint at him trying to find her again. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not missing something, am I? She doesn't die after they break up.
I wonder if in the original text it's clarified that she ended up marrying someone else and was happy, and therefore that's not an option. So when you get to the end of the story, you're not wondering why isn't Scrooge pursuing, like, that ship's long sailed, basically, is my understanding.
Yeah, actually, now that you've said that, I feel like potentially there are some versions where Christmas Present features him looking in on her as well.
Right.
And seeing her with a new family, maybe. That sounds vaguely familiar. Anyway. But it's fucking
I must
Michael
admit,
Caine.
I'm not the best person to ask. My knowledge of the story, I read it in high school, in like my second year, and those were my naughty years. Year 8 high school. I was a little shitbag. I did not pay anywhere near as much attention as I should have done. That was my
and also I think I think it's one of those things where, because everyone knows the broad strokes, you kind of almost don't. You just don't remember the nuances. What you know categorically is 3 ghosts visit. Mm-hmm. You might remember about Marley, but I must admit, when I did the production, I was like, "Who the fuck's this guy?" And someone's like, "There's like a pre-ghost." I was like, "Is there?"
Yeah. So funny enough, I do remember Marley, but I only remember Marley because, and they do it in the movie, which I always love. I remember, because obviously I loved this movie since I was a kid, when we read the book in high school, and I got to the bit where the door knocker, for a moment, he sees the shadow of Marley's face it's like a lion door knocker, I think. And now in this, they do a very deliberate, the door knocker morphs into Marley's face that cackles at him. But in the book, he's just so haunted with his own life choices, even before he starts. Marley only recently having passed on his mind, he sees a shadow of his face in the door knocker, and then, Scrooge, you idiot, what are you doing? And then goes into the house. When I got to that bit when we did it in school, I remember thinking, they do that in the movie! You know, the movie this book is adapted from. You know, the Muppets Christmas Carol. Yeah. It's crazy that this Charles Dickens guy went and did an adaptation of the Muppets and just took out all the Muppets. Super weird. But yeah, no, I remember being like, "Oh, I knew this was in it because this is in the thing," you know. So like this, so I always have a distinct memory of Marley just because it's like right at the top of the book, and it's there's a really particular moment when my brain as a child kicked into these things, and you know, these are just really direct adaptation. That's because until then I didn't know how accurate this movie was to Christmas Carol. Do you know what I mean? Like I just assumed it was like a jokey version of it, and that they changed a bunch of stuff. I guess I always just assumed it wasn't that faithful because it was for kids. So
yeah. Just you just going back to the point about it happening too fast. I think in the hands of a lesser actor, that's what you've identified as a much bigger problem.
Yes,
because you see Michael Caine emoting through all of the past stuff. You see there is a difference between present and when he returns. Like, you know, when he returns, he's full blown, "You boy, what day is it?" And you know, in the present, he's kind of termed, but it's a lot more feeling sorry for Tiny Tim and not wanting Christmas present to go, oh my god, and I really realised that in this adaptation. I'd never sort of picked up on before. Get ready, Dan. This is going to be a new segment. Let's get ready. So, okay, grab your boots, Dan.
Yeah.
Grab your boots.
Got it.
Look at your map.
Yep.
And go, oh, wait, hold on a second. Aren't we going the wrong way, Chris? No. We're not going to Nitpick Corner, Dan.
Oh, yeah.
We're heading to Pretentious Corner. You ready?
Oh, yes. I love Pretentious Corner. Is Pretentious Corner far from Nitpick Corner? Do we pass Nitpick Corner on the way to Pretentious Corner, or is it a different route? Are we going the opposite direction?
I think I don't know. I think you pass it on the... No, you can't pass a... Well, I suppose it depends where we're starting from. Mm-hmm. Both a nitpicky and pretentious answer to that question. So in that case, yes, you pass it.
I like how we came to that conclusion. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. And that's one of those things where I'll like hang up the phone and I'll be like, Jess, there's this moment where Dad said this and then I said this, and Jess will be like, I made some mistakes. I shouldn't have married you. But
and she's right.
Pretentious. Yeah. No, that's fair. Pretentious Corner. Fucking hell. Like, and like I say, it just really struck me here. The fucking incredible work of Dickens and the fucking symbolism of Christmas present. I'd never really sort of taken on board Christmas present getting old and dying, because, and that notion of
the present is fleeting.
The present is fleeting. The present always goes too soon. You can't hold on to the present. It's always going to very quickly go, and like that's what happens with that ghost. And I was like, fucking hell, that's some symbolism right there, people.
Yeah, it's great. I wrote that in my notes. The present is fleeting, thus aging. It's great. It is good. It is good. I couldn't remember, but I assumed because it's probably a little not to judge anyone who worked on this very fine movie, but that feels like a Dickens rather than a Muppets Christmas Carol.
Oh, yeah. Like, absolutely.
I don't want to make it sound like I think they're not smart enough to come up with that. But that feels like a Dickens idea to me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I definitely think there's probably hopefully for many reasons the person that directed that production I was in isn't listening to this, but if they are, they're probably like, fucking hell, you've only just got that.
Yeah.
They did make wise decision from an one thing I did notice from an adaptation point of view. I'm pretty sure there's in many adaptations and in the original, there's like the Christmas future, like there's lots of like, again, we're out of Pretentious Corner, but like lots of symbolism around like poverty and stuff, and like don't they like open their robes and there's corpses and stuff. I don't know if I'm remembering it right, but I'm sure there's that kind of stuff in it. Right. And I think it's the right move that the Muppets didn't play too much on that side of things. Well, I think they also made some clever adaptation choices.
Yeah, well, let's hit that topic, because I think one of the topics that sometimes comes up around this movie is it too scary for children? Because there are some spooky moments in this. First of all, he's automatically, dealing with ghosts, right? We've got the Marleys show up early on. They're kind of scary ghosts. They're funny, but they're like, they're chains and they're in his face and like they're, it's pretty haunting. I would say if you were very young. I think, despite their best efforts for it not to be, the ghost of Christmas Past is the most terrifying thing in the movie. Shouldn't be. It's not supposed to be. I think that's an accident, but it's fucking horrifying. I'm sorry. All love to the people who worked on this movie. Did a wonderful job in so many incredible scenes with just brilliant puppetry and visuals and stuff. The design on the Ghost of Christmas Past is fucking accidentally terrifying, and I can't not be scared of it. I'm more scared of the past than the future, and that is a mistake. But obviously, the movie acknowledges multiple times, is this too scary for kids? It does it twice. The first time they have the brilliant comeback of, it's culture. It's fine. And then the second time they're like, nope, this is too scary. We're out. And our narrators bail. They bail on the third act of the movie. They're like, we'll be back when this bit's over. Which has two effects. One, it's a great joke, right? It's just a genius joke. But two, it allows the last moments of the story to play out naturally, because one of the reasons this movie gets to do that brilliant balance of being a Muppets movie and a faithful adaptation of Christmas Carol is, again, that choice for the narrators, and to make those narrators Rizzo and Gonzo, because whenever you need Muppety stuff to be happening, you can just have one of those two do something slapsticky or funny or say something funny, like the one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, the gate. They climb over this big old fence, and then it turns out Rizzo can just get under the gate, right? And it was a whole faff getting him over. Then he just goes under to get his stuff. And then he doesn't even understand when Gonzo's like, what the hell, man? He's like, what? I went to back up my stuff. But like, doing that, it's amazing how many functions those two characters serve, because they're allowing us to get all of this legitimate literary text from the book into the movie, which I talked about earlier, but they're also giving us comic relief regularly, Muppet-style comic relief really regularly, and it allows us to break up what otherwise might be dramatic scenes that are long or less interesting to children. It allows us to tell the story with a very consistent joke rate also, because there's always a funny character in the scene, even if the scene is mostly dramatic, because they're always there. And the fact they bail on the third act is also genius, because one, it's a good joke in of itself, it's very meta, but it's quite funny, but it also means that the third act can be serious without feeling the need to give them something funny to do and interrupt that seriousness. So when the movie really does want to be fully dramatic, because we are dropping the comedy for a minute to just really revel in Scrooge's final moments of despair before the change is complete, I should say. We can do that without going like, what are Rizzo and Gonzo? Are they falling over somewhere? Is Rizzo trapped in some ice? Is he's had his tail lit on fire again? Rizzo goes through an awful lot in this movie. So it's clever to make them leave, but it also like references the scariness of it, and it's like a good meta joke while also doing something to allow the light into the movie to be dramatic without the thing. But it's also pointing out to me as a person reviewing it how clever it was to have those characters performing all of those functions throughout the movie. It's crazy how valuable Rizzo and Gonzo are to this movie. So I guess the initial question we were on there is the movie too scary? And I got off on a real tangent. But I just, like, while it occurred to me how much I wanted to praise this movie for their use of Rizzo and Gonzo, because it is genius on every single level. But even though that was a several-minute tangent, I am very sorry. To loop us back around to the initial point I was going to ask you about, Chris, do you think any of the scary stuff is too scary for children in this film? Because that is something that's come up time and time again over the years.
I mean, it's so hard to judge without, showing it to a child, isn't it? But there's a world where it could be, especially for younger kids. But I think they, because of Gonzo, because of Michael Caine's performance again, and how maybe even as a result of him being one round slightly in Christmas Present. I think they do. I think they do enough to soften it, and to make you. It's okay to be scared because they're scared too, and all that sort of stuff. And kids, as Stephen Moffat always says, kids' threshold for these things is higher than people realise. And I don't think it is too scary for children. No.
I agree, and I think one, it depends on the sensibility of the child in question, but two, I think the movie does enough to you always know you're safe. Because there's always some element of comedy around it. The only time it's not is the sort of final ghost. Apparently, one of the very earliest ideas before they sort of figured out what the script was going to be was that Gonzo would play the Ghost of Christmas Future, and he'd still have the hood up, but the only thing you could see is just his nose sticking out of the hood, which is a very funny joke. I prefer what they did, but I do love the joke. Which Muppet is that? It's Gonzo, because his nose is sticking out.
But you don't. The thing is, and I know you already agree with this, and it's not, again, you're not saying anything different with that comment, but you don't want a joke in that moment.
No,
you know what I mean?
100% you don't. No. It's a great joke, but you don't want it. No, 100%. Yeah, I think the original plan, the very earliest one, I think I'll cover it properly in trivia, but I think the original plan was for Scooter, who doesn't appear in this movie because sadly the voice actor for Scooter passed away before the movie was in production. Scooter, Miss Piggy, and Gonzo were going to be the three ghosts, I think, in the very earliest sort of idea stage of it. So yeah, interesting. But it's I wanted to quickly ask as well. Did you think Ghost of Christmas Past was accidentally scary?
Yeah. And I think Future's fairly scary as well. And Present is just...
Future is supposed to be scary. I'm happy for a thing that's supposed to be scary to be scary. I cannot fathom how we didn't realise how terrifying Past was.
Yeah, I think it's, just the fact that it's a child really doesn't help. But I think the other thing is just Again, I think it's a brilliant move, unless they weren't going for fear at this point. But it's also the way, they almost hypnotise Scrooge. And again, Michael Caine's performance of it. I did think Past was scary. Maybe arguably a little too scary. But, equally, this film's ability to shift tones and go from, harrowing and to emotional to jolly to song is a masterstroke. It's brilliant, and I think they handle it well throughout the entire movie, including jokes like that whole one that really sticks out to me about American way, the British way. That happens moments after the haunting child has hypnotised Michael Caine and dragged him into the past.
Yes.
And, it works. I just want to say, because I've looked it up, so in the original story, after showing Scrooge the day he and Belle ended their relationship, the ghost also shows him Belle married later, and that she found happiness with another man. The scene is often admitted in the adaptations. And also there's a list here, some adaptations, like in Jack Thorne's adaptation, he does reunite, but she doesn't leave her family. In other adaptations, there's, he gives her money and all that sort of stuff. So it basically, Belle and what happens to Belle changes per adaptation. But in the original story, we see her with her family, but we don't see her again after that. So, yeah.
I think that's if I'm in the shoes of the Muppet guys, that's I'm sticking with that, right? I'm doing a scene that demonstrates, whether it be during Presents section where we just see what she's up to in the modern day and she's happily married and has kids and enjoys Christmas with her family, or if we just do it while we're with Past and it's a Christmas from the past but not necessarily Scrooge's past, and we see her happy with her husband, somewhere between.
I think Yeah, I think I would too, but I don't know if there's also a danger of then making the story about that, because I don't know. So apparently, I don't think I read it in that sentence, but at some point in my reading about Belle, like it makes Scrooge wonder whether he should have had children. So I don't know if to some degree actually that scene maybe in the original text, and I can't remember for sure whether that's definitely in the original text, but that's serving almost a Tiny Tim purpose. That's serving a laying the seeds for, him becoming Tiny Tim's second father, and then being really affected when he sees him in the present and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that scene is often admitted because the story isn't about a lost love.
No,
maybe.
but it could. But it could. I think when we're doing that section, sort of in Christmas Present, where we're showing that people are happy without him when he doesn't celebrate Christmas. You know what I mean? Like you doing a very, I'm talking quick, version of that with her. Oh yeah, look, she's happy without you too. Would probably it would stop you asking the question in the final act of whether he goes back to her or not, because you'd understand that, well, that ship sailed and he knows that now. He already blew that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Belle, though, and that storyline, I mean, obviously, I always joke, and I do mean this as a joke, that Chris, you're our resident love expert. You're our guy that we when there's a love plot in a movie, I always pass to you to get your thoughts on it. In this one, it happens in about 3 minutes. We're introduced to Belle. We're told that they have a bit of a spark. Then we cut forward to a scene that both tells us that they ended up together and then ends the relationship within about, I want to say 60 seconds. Obviously then there's a song, and the song does a lot to explain the breakup, but if
you watch the version with the song in, it does. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, we'll do that next, because I think we're at that point. But we'll talk about When Love Is Gone in a minute. But I think just in general, in very much the same vein that I had the sort of criticism, but not really, of the way that we changed Scrooge quickly, arguably, in the earlier parts of this movie. I think the same could be argued for how the love story plays out. How did you think it was enough, considering there's a lot going on in the movie? Can you get away with doing it that quickly? Was it a problem for you? Yeah, just on that note.
Yes, it was fine, because it wasn't, I don't think, kind of similar to what we were just saying about the other scene. I don't think that scene exists to tell a love story. That scene exists to say, at this point, his head is being turned by money and being turned by, in this instance, we haven't got enough to get married and all of that stuff, but that's becoming his obsession, and as a result, he loses potentially the love of his life. But it's not a mini love story within the film. It is saying, this is who he is, this is the beginning of him pushing people away, this is perhaps why he doesn't get close to anyone anymore, because he was hurt by this, and this is this is the catalyst. This is who he is as a person. I don't see it as, whilst it is a story about it, whilst it is a moment about a relationship, I don't judge it as a love story, because that's not the purpose it's serving in this. And I think the purpose it's serving, this is the beginning of. Not even the beginning, because obviously we've had other flashbacks and hints and stuff, but this is a pivotal moment in Scrooge becoming who he becomes. It does that brilliantly. Do you know what I mean? I don't think you don't need to buy that they had a great love story. And if you had more time, maybe it would be great to explore that more. But you don't need that for the rest of the film. What you need to know is this was a moment that set him on a path, and it does that well.
So, with that in mind, do you think then? Because I agree with you. I think that the purpose of the scene should and is to demonstrate Scrooge in his early days prioritizing his wealth over his loved ones, and losing them for that. But if that's the choice he made and he's lived with, could you argue then the reaction to, When Love Is Gone makes the scene about the lost love rather than about, that's the moment he made his choice about his money over his friends and family.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Hey, maybe that's why it's cut, Dan.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just being devil's advocate because I think on the whole it
No,
works.
I think that's fair.
It's sort of like that perfect level of nuanced where it's like simple enough for a child, but like nuanced enough that an adult is like, I wonder what the motivation exactly is coming to here. Is this, but it does happen very quickly. I think no version of a review of this doesn't observe. I think that some of these character beats happen very quickly. Which I guess is the compromise when you stuff the movie full of, the prose and the Muppet stuff. The actual character work is sometimes maybe the thing that is shortchanged, in favor of the sort of like the tonal preference. Like maybe that I think the preference is the comedy and also the being the adaptation is having that tone and having that telling the overall version of that story. It's almost like a cheat sheet for the book for kids, I think, in a weird way. So yeah, I don't know. I think always going to get bumps like that, but I think his reaction is interesting because it does feel the movie does kind of present it as a regret. But not necessarily because he's sad he lost his money, but because he lost the girl, and I think it puts the emphasis maybe in the wrong place. But let's. I think ultimately it works though. They get away with it. It doesn't really matter because it could be either, and I think maybe a little of both. Makes it a bit more complex. Maybe it's both that there's a lost to love, and also this is the him seeing the moment he made that choice. So it covers both. Let's talk about When Love Is Gone. So, for those who do not know, this song was dropped from the theatrical release over objections from producer-director Brian Henson. And it was all at the request of Jeffrey Katzenberg, who considered it too sad for young children. And this was quite a last-minute decision in the process, which leads to a very jarring version of the scene that was... ended up in the final version of the film, the theatrical and version of the film I grew up with. And it is a little jarring, because she sort of says, yeah, I guess you do prefer your money, and then she walks off. And then Scrooge looks devastated. And the movie didn't really earn his devastation in that cut. It's like his reaction seems like Gonzo and Rizzo. I think Rizzo's crying and Gonzo's patting him on the back. And it's like, it's sad, but it seemed like a bit of a it doesn't seem like a love story that fell apart. It seems like she just made a very practical decision where she goes, yeah, okay, this isn't working then because you think money is more important. See ya, and leaves. And then they're crying, and he looks devastated. Whereas when you keep the song in When Love Is Gone, it does make more sense of that moment, right? I agree. So the scene has been restored various ways and times throughout the years. It was put on a DVD and Blu-ray release as a deleted scene, but from a weird print, they couldn't find the original negatives. And then there was a massive campaign in, I want to say maybe 2020, 2021, to get the scene restored, right? It was a huge social media thing. People had a lot of time in 2020. For some reason. There's a huge campaign to get the movie put back together as it was intended for the anniversary, which was 2022, which was its 30th anniversary. There was a huge amount of, will they be able to find the negatives to even restore it? Do you just restore it with worse footage so it doesn't blend in with the rest of the movie and it suddenly looks like the movie has shifted to a shitter version? And all this stuff. Eventually, first of all, they never actually found the negatives. What Brian Henson told Variety was that they found an interpositive print of the scene, which he described as good as the negative. These are usually used for color timing and other technical bits of putting a movie together, and are not generally used as the masters to restore a movie from. But it was good enough to do that from, and they restored the footage. And in 2022, for the anniversary, it did get a release with the scene reinstated as it should be. So it's its original length, but because these things are never without controversy, on Disney Plus, you've got to actually go through a few steps to watch it with that scene. If you just click on Muppet's Christmas Carol, it will show you the version with that song removed, and it's 2-3 minutes, I think, in total. I think 4 if you add the surrounding material. You have to go into extras, and then there's a whole other version of it that just it's like Muppet's Christmas Carol longer cut or something, which feels like a really weird concession. I don't know why Disney just didn't put this one up, but at the same time, fans of this movie, and I'm among you, but let me just put this out there. It's not that big of a deal. It's better with it, I agree, but it is 2 minutes. It does not make or break the movie. It flows reasonably well without it. Not as well. I'm agreeing with you that it's better with, for sure. But the way people talked about this scene, and still talk about this scene. I mean, I sent Chris a screenshot of someone describing on a social media platform, I think it might have been Threads, how to watch the movie. And their post read, the full and only correct version of Muppet's Christmas Carol, including When Love Is Gone, is there on Disney Plus, but it's hidden away under the extras. Yes, it should be the version that plays by default. The fans of this movie have been so aggressive about this scene, and are so particular about this scene, and so protective of this scene. You would think it was an absolute masterpiece. It is good, but I could not muster up this much passion about this scene. I'm glad it's restored. I'm glad I may watch the movie with it there. But dear Lord, do these people feel very strongly about this scene? It's incredible. The first of all, the original campaign to get it reinstated was mad. It was really, really a lot. And again, the way they talk about it is like the movie is unwatchable without it. I'm sorry. Little tiny reality check. There's a bump. It does have a slightly jarring cut, but you follow what's happening and it is mostly fine. Right? So yeah, my take on that scene is I'm glad it's back, but I was not affected by it the way many fans of this movie were. It is crazy to me that they are that passionate about it. I still find it strange that people are so serious about, do not watch the version without that scene. If you watch the version without that scene, that is the impure version. That is the incorrect version. You are doing it's 2 minutes. It's not do you know what I mean? It's not a 3-hour longer director's cut. It's a 2-minute scene. It's good. It's fine. Apparently the reason it was taken out, Katzenberger just thought children would be bored. Basically, he just thought it was long and boring for what it was. And I guess for young children, maybe.
Yeah, for young children, I can see that logic. I think it's a great song. I think I don't know the actress's name, but the actress playing Belle's brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She's got a wonderful voice, and I think it's a really, really great song. But in terms of how it fits into the narrative, in terms of young children, I do understand. But I think it's definitely one that, it's easier to get really angry about if you're an adult. I can't imagine any kid would see the two versions. They'd be like, oh, I don't recognise that song, but it would be, it would be that. It wouldn't be Uproar.
Yeah. I feel like the fervour about the version you watch is maybe unwarranted. And I get it. I know people are passionate. And it is the superior version. I'm not disputing that. I just don't think it's so much superior that you're basically hurting the film by watching the original. If someone tells me they had a good time this Christmas, they stuck on Muppet's Christmas Carol, and I know in my head that they probably just went on Disney Plus, found it, and watched it, and didn't have that song in it. Sure. Good. Like, they watched the movie. It's a good movie. I hope they liked it. It's Meredith Braun, by the way, is the name of the actress who does Belle. She's great. She is great in the movie, and she sings it beautifully.
Yeah,
and it is a nice song, and it does a lot for Scrooge's character. And it is a moment of devastation when she basically says that the love of their relationship is gone. It is hard to hear for Scrooge, and I get that. And it does make more sense of the scene that follows it, like in the moments that follow it. I 100% agree. So yeah, it is a good song. I'm glad it's back. I do think it'd be easier if Disney just made it the main one, but I'm not marching on Disney headquarters to demand it. I'm glad they found enough of a negative or whatever that intersplice, whatever they called it, that other version, that they were able to restore the movie there. I mean, that means a lot to fans, I know. I wonder what they do if it was cut from the theatrical cut last minute. I know that the Prince Charles Cinema show an old 35mm print of that movie, or at least that's what I thought happened. I wonder if it's not in that version.
Yeah,
don't know.
That would be, I'd be fascinated to know that.
Yeah.
Let us. Well, I don't know if anyone's going to the Prince Charles showing, but yeah, I assume if they're showing that, it's not. But who knows?
Yeah, so one second. Let me see if there's an answer somewhere. Prince Charles Cinema. When Love Is Gone. Let's see. Featuring the film's lost song When Love Is Gone.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's cool.
That they promote it under that. I guess if you know... I guess if you know who that screening is for fans, right? Like, oh, maybe they just actually run the Blu-ray version then, because like looking at it here, it doesn't mention 35mm. So when I went to the Prince Charles Cinema to watch Gremlins, it was like they're running the original 35mm print, which was like a big deal. But this appears to be a digital version, which presumably is just the Blu-ray print digitized for a cinema.
Well, I suppose it might be as well because most versions are sing-along.
Oh yeah, and you need it to be digital because obviously you're not going to have the fucking words in the original theatrical cut. Yeah, you're right. Okay, my bad. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Still cool that they do it.
I've got a random. I agree with everything that's just been said there. I've got this probably also leans slightly into Triv. But one thing I didn't realise watching this movie that makes it even more of a fucking amazing feat is that tragically, well, I'm assuming because of the In Loving Memory, Jim Henson passed before this movie.
Yes. This movie is directed and done by his son.
Excuse my language. Sorry for swearing.
Brian Henson. He died in 1990, I think the year before this was shot.
Wow.
Yeah. Kind of amazing, actually. To Brian Henson's credit, like the fact this movie is even remotely good is impressive because that's a lot of pressure to put on a young filmmaker who's got a lot to live up to with his dad, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But also it feels, I mean, you'd be able to judge this better than me because, as established, I haven't really seen many Muppets thing, but it felt very quintessentially Muppets to me. And they managed to achieve that without Jim Henson. That's phenomenal. That's amazing. Can I know it was his son, so clearly someone very involved with the world and, that knew their dad very well, but still... It's just crazy, man.
Yeah, my assumption is that Brian had been, helping out on the Muppets project for years in various roles before leading in this example. But it's still the experience needed to direct something very, very particular, like a Muppets movie. It's a really specific sort of gig, right? Shooting Muppets is tough. There are a lot more considerations than shooting a normal movie. There's a bunch of technical, practical things to figure out, creatively speaking. And then, of course, doing an adaptation of something a bit more sort of serious and literary while also still keeping the tone of the Muppets as well. Because Brian also had to be the guardian of the Muppets, as, tonally speaking. It had to be their humor. It had to be their style somehow. And managing that, balancing that, I don't know how he did it, but he did it. It's really, really good. And that it's got it right before even a word is uttered. When the credits are happening and they're just acting like the Muppets are the real people, so it's like Gonzo as Charles Dickens, Kermit as thingy. Like it's perfect, right? It's such a funny idea that they just credit the Muppets. So it's like Michael Caine is Scrooge, but Kermit's Bob Cratchit. Like not the actor that's voicing Kermit and performing Kermit, just Kermit. And it continues that weird Muppet thing of like these Muppet adaptation movies. The sort of underlying joke is that the Muppets have gone and gotten themselves cast in these adaptations, which is just very funny to me and will remain funny to me. So yeah. Very good stuff.
I really like that. But so one element of the Muppets of it all that we've not talked about yet is the cinematography and the shooting style and like the low camera angles and stuff. I mean, I haven't necessarily got a lot. I'm not a cinematography expert. I haven't got much more to say than that was fucking cool, wasn't it? And I noticed it. But I think there's so much intricate detail in the world and in the shots and in the background. And, there's fruit talking and there's the Muppets being Muppets and Muppets doing entertaining shit in the background and, all of that sort of stuff. And I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, I think the attention to detail on that stuff's always really good with these movies. And I think the underlying, like, thing is this movie is the Muppets movie that sort of finds itself in the middle ground between the old style and the new style. So the Muppets movies prior to this one, the Jim Henson era, were very heavily relying on practical, right? And were not did not have access to computer effects in the same way these movies started to do. And this movie is the one in the middle. Before they could digitally remove the rods that move the arms, before they could digitally do this and that. So this movie's got a real mixture of Jim Henson, old school, practical Muppets, and the first experiments in compositing. And as a result, this movie's got some really interesting successes and some really interesting failures in its visuals. And I only noted a couple, but the compositing of the penguins when they first start skating is fucking dreadful. Right? I'm sorry. It's a delightful movie. That shot looks like shit. They do not look like they're present in the scene at all. Just the very first establishing shot of the penguins going down the street. The rest are either good to passable to good. There's one other moment as well where the compositing was dodgy. I think it was the flight with the Ghost of Christmas Past. There's some odd compositing there where it doesn't look like that's really happening, which obviously it's not, and obviously the limitations of the time. But this is a really interesting movie because, like, in later movies, they would use digital effects a lot more to sort of make the Muppets feel more. Well, we can't see them from the waist down because we know what's down there. This movie does a lot of that. It shows legs where it can. But nothing beating the practicalities of the opening scene of Muppets Take Manhattan, which has Miss Piggy and Kermit completely free riding bikes through a park where their legs are actually turning the pedals. And to this day, I do not know how they achieved that shot. And I don't want to know. It's one of the most magical things I ever saw as a kid in cinema, and I've never been able to unsee it, and I cannot fathom how they did it, and I don't want to know. Because that movie was like the 80s. I physically don't understand how that shot works to this day. And to me, when I was a kid, that was fucking magic. And this movie has a really good mixture of, like, practical stuff where we see legs and you go like, I don't know how they did that. That's really cool. And like shots where it's like, I think they maybe use some modern compositing techniques or maybe a little bit of computer stuff to make that just smooth that over, but it looks really good. There's a bunch of stuff like that as well that's really cool. This movie, but this is that really awkward. This is the middle ground where they hadn't quite developed the technologies enough to be able to do it seamlessly yet, but they decided to take enough of a step into that direction that everything wasn't completely practical. So this movie, I think maybe this movie, if you were to line up all of the Muppets movies and say which one visually ages the worst, it might, in terms of just purely practical puppetry believability, it might end up being this one, but only because of its very unfortunate position between those two eras of Muppets. But on the whole, though, the choices for the camera work are amazing. Like, it's just beautiful to look at most of the time. Like, the sets are like cartoony but also real. Like, the world that they created in this, and again, in particular, I want to talk about the set design, is just beautiful. It's so good. It's like you can believe both a Muppet and a real human being live in that world. You know what I mean? The Muppets don't look... Because if you just shot it on legit London streets, the Muppets look out of place. You shoot it at Sesame Street, then the real person looks out of place. And so there's this real balance, to try and make it work for everyone. And it looks great. Looks great as a result. So yeah, big... the filmmaking on display is incredible, for sure. And everything they do is in the service of the story, and it all works really well. The other thing I want to talk about just very quickly on the Muppets point, obviously as a huge Muppets fan, the use of the various characters is perfect. Like, we already talked about the Marleys being played by Statler and Waldorf, but Beaker
Kermit is Cratchit. Fucking yeah.
Wow. Kermit is Cratchit. Beaker and Honeydew as Portly Man number 2 and the charity collectors is brilliant. That's just a wonderful choice. Honeydew interacting with Scrooge is one of my favorite things in this whole movie, and Beaker being so scared and he's doing and his like head sticks into his body. It's so good. It's a classic Beaker move, but it's perfect. It's so good. We already talked about Rizzo and Gonzo working really well, but it's genius. I think minimal use of characters that really don't fit the tone is good. So Animal is in the movie, but he's not in a huge role. Fozzie is only in a pretty small role in this movie. Miss Piggy, same. And I think that's okay. They're all chosen to do the part that suits them best with the least interruption and the least taking the audience out of the scene.
Do you think that's an issue for Big Muppets fans? Do you think Big Muppets fans at the time or watching this since would be like, give me more Miss Piggy?
Maybe. I wouldn't tell that person they were wrong. If you put a movie on called The Muppets, anything, and Miss Piggy's in it for like 3 scenes, I would, that's a valid complaint.
I do love, and even as not a big Muppets guy, I got this, the fact that obviously she usually calls him Kermie, and in this she calls him Cratchy.
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Yeah. There's another really good one. There's one with Statler and Waldorf where they talk about leave the jokes to the bears or something, and that's because in the Muppets they mostly heckled Fozzie Bear while he did stand-up.
Yeah, but also I think that's a dig, but a really clever, funny one. Mm-hmm. That's because that's the gravy thing, isn't it? So yes. they're basically taking the piss out of Charles Dickens and saying that his joke isn't good enough.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they're making fun of the crap pun. I just think like smart choices used all around here for who was playing who. I got to see all my favorite Muppets. With Scooter the exception. I mean, not that Scooter is like my favorite Muppet, but if we're talking about the classic Muppets cast, they're all here with the exception of Scooter, and I think they're all used well. I mean, the only other one that is very unfortunately present but doesn't get a speaking line is Rolf, and I think Rolf was another one of Henson's characters, and they hadn't found someone sufficiently able to fill those shoes yet. So Rolf appears without a speaking role, but they eventually found a Rolf, and Rolf's had speaking roles in many movies since, so it's not the end of the world. I just wanted to give credit to those choices. I thought that was all really good. I think we covered most of the movie.
I think so, yeah. Muppet choices, great. Yeah, I think so.
Let me just quickly. I'm gonna quickly glance just to make sure I didn't miss any big notes because I feel like there's at least one of the big.
We haven't talked. I mean, but then again, I think this is the problem. It's just like, yeah, they did it and they did it well. Like we haven't talked particularly naturally. We've naturally talked about past, present, future. We haven't, and I don't know how much there is to say on it. One, the chain effects and stuff of Marley was done brilliantly and really effective, as is a lot of the visuals when they're transferring through time, even though it's very, it's very 90s or whenever this came out. I think it still works. I think it's still effective. It holds up. Again, a lot of that is down to Michael Caine. We haven't necessarily talked about, the end and the sort of the reversal of, and again, I suppose we haven't talked about that because the main thing to say is Michael Caine's fucking brilliant in that scene, and it's really affirming and joyous and stuff.
Yeah, and the way they bring all the different characters and plots together, because it's like a lot of disparate things we were introduced to, like the choice to show him putting coal out for his other workers. They're not going to see that till tomorrow, but that's that's something they want. It's just a nice touch. It wraps up a plot from like the first act of the movie. We see him go be nice to his nephew. We see it. Well, we hit all the beats that wrap up pretty much everything that you want to see wrapped up. My favorite of which, obviously, being his prank on Bob Cratchit when he pretends that he expected him in work that morning.
Yeah.
And the brilliant gag of Miss Piggy being like, I'll show you what, she gets to be Miss Piggy. She gets to be really like, oh, you're out there. And then, it reveals that he's joking and like, it all it does. But like, moments like that are just delightful. And it's like very Muppets, but also very Christmas Carol. And then seeing everyone sat around the table eating. I mean, admittedly, I did have the thought of, that's a very big turkey you've just presumably brought for Miss Piggy to cook for you.
Not only that, but that turkey's going to take fucking ages, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she should have been cooking that like a day ago. There's no way that turkey. And then the whole fucking town turns up. It seems there's a huge crowd outside. Even no matter how big that turkey is, it's not going around that far.
No, I have seen adaptations where what he purchases is a cooked turkey, which makes more sense.
Yeah, and even the kid that he gives the money to go get it is the small like homeless like orphan child from the earlier in the movie that tries to carol that he kicks away. Like they the way that they link all these things together. The final act of this movie is pretty much perfect in my opinion. The way they link all the characters. And have Scrooge go around and make his amends with everyone. Sometimes in quick ways, sometimes in more lengthy ways. Just works perfectly. It's really good. On a visual note, I did find it kind of funny that they gave Tiny Tim a slightly different shade of green, I guess, to show how sick he was. Which I thought was both like clever as a detail, but also kind of funny and sad all at once. He's like not Kermit Green like his other son. He's like a weird brown shade of green, like just to sort of demonstrate. Like it's pretty tragic.
Because we've complimented the actors or we've complimented the Muppets. We haven't in some ways given, I don't know the voice actors' names, but given we like the movie and Michael Caine. We very much in this review treated the Muppets as the Muppets. Mm-hmm. We should say the voice performance of the guy who plays Kermit in this when Tiny Tim has died is absolutely phenomenal and heartbreaking. And that whole Tiny Tim loved to do that whole bit is just stunning. Mm-hmm. Like it's so effective. It's so meaningful. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
I think with a lot of them, they're the performer and the voice. I believe, like actually operating the puppet and doing the voice. So yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff in there. And I think it's the usual crowd. It's your Frank Oz's, doing like Piggy, Fozzie, Animal, Sam the Eagle, like that whole cast, and to Steve Whitmire, who was Kermit for a long time in the immediate aftermath of Jim Henson dying. He also did, I think he's Rizzo as well. So it's like a handful of guys Let me see if I can pull up some other names. See if I can remind myself. Oh yeah. Okay, so Dave Goles, who does like Gonzo, Jerry Nelson, who does Tiny Tim, and the one of Statler and or Waldorf. They're listed here as Jacob Marley, but obviously I can't remember which way around that is. But that team in general. David Rudman, who does Swedish Chef, who I must admit, actually, Swedish Chef is my least favourite Muppet cameo in this because it's the one that makes the least sense in world, and it's the one that stands out the most as, they wanted to put the Swedish Chef in this movie. And it's fine. It doesn't, completely take you out of the movie, but there's, 2 seconds where you're like, what is a Swedish Chef doing here? This doesn't make any sense.
Well, speaking of that, as a big Muppets fan,
yes,
I assume the bit where the bookkeepers randomly sing about an island that's a Muppets Treasure Island reference, right?
I don't think so. I think they're just being like, oh no, it's tropical, or it's the joke is he's telling them they don't need the coal. He's saying you don't need the coal, right. And they're like, yep, yeah, we don't. It's great. It's hot. We don't want to disagree with Scrooge because we're scared of him.
I assumed that little snippet that they sing as they walk away was a song from Muppets Treasure Island.
Muppets Treasure Island comes along after this. I don't think that movie does.
Okay.
Yeah,
my bad.
I think this was the first of that era of the Muppets where it was like the Muppets adapt something. So this was 92. Muppets Treasure Island is 1996, so Muppets Treasure Island is 4 years later. But
my bad.
Again, you're not a big Muppets guy. I don't expect you to remember all the things.
I think we've said this before, by the way, and I don't know why the fuck, and to some degree maybe that's what they were trying to do with the Office thing, but surely this is what the Muppets needs to do, right? Pick fucking, I don't know, Oliver Twist, or, obviously that's Dickensian again, but, just pick a classic story and adapt it, they did here. That's your next Muppets project by this point, but is that what they were trying to do with The Office, where they were essentially adapting, the modern-day equivalent of classic, well-known stories?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I don't know, I think... two minds. There's a lot of video essayists who are huge Muppets, Muppets, academics that know everything about the Muppets, and there's a lot of debate about what do you do with the Muppets now in the modern day. The Jason Segel movie reset them to what they originally were, which is the various crew and cast of a variety show that. Had been famous in the 80s and were trying to find their way back to being famous now, even though what they did back then is hokey now. It's not a variety act anymore. Because there are 2 distinct eras of the Muppets, in my opinion. And that is the variety era, when it was the Muppets show, in that they were the cast of a show, and we got to see behind the scenes and the acts they were doing on stage as well. And then the adaptation era, which is this era, which is the Muppets... Treasure Island, the Muppets Christmas Carol. There was another big one at least. And I think there's a lot of people that now they're like, what do you do with the Muppets? Do you just do remakes of old movies where you just choose one character to be the human role and give the Muppets all the other roles for funsies? Like the Fast and the Furious, Vin Diesel still Dom Toretto, but everyone else is Muppets. That sort of thing. And I know people want that sort of stuff. I maybe fall more into the traditionalist role as much as I love this movie, and think that if you want to bring the Muppets back in the modern day, you need to find a way. What's the modern day equivalent to a variety show? And you need to hone in on that idea. I think, what do you do on stage to entertain people these days, or for a TV show, a weekly TV show, and have them attempting to do that, But I guess that's what.
I think the challenge there is the modern day equivalent of a variety show is scrolling through your phone at night watching Instagram Reels or TikToks.
And what's interesting about that is that's what Muppets Now was, which was the Disney Plus show where it was all done. It was all Muppets digital, and it was they were doing sketches and stuff through the internet, and it was all internet themed. So yeah, they've done that and it didn't work. So I don't know what you do with the Muppets now, but yeah, you're right. Maybe the answer is just more adaptations like this, and I'd be up for it. I wouldn't be against it. It's such a shame. The Jason Segel movie really should have been the revitalization of the Muppets, and then unfortunately the Muppets again. Sorry, it wasn't called that in the end. Muppets Most Wanted didn't quite light the world on fire the way they were hoping. sadly. I think it's a good movie. I wish it had kept its original title. I always hate calling it Muppets Most Wanted. It's a dumb title. If it had been called The Muppets again, I think more people have actually gone and seen it. Muppets Most Wanted feels like a cheap, shitty cash-in sequel as a title. Whereas The Muppets again...
Yeah, I think I saw a headline that was like the Muppets' last film is its most underrated or something.
It's a good movie.
Yeah. It's a good movie.
Yeah. Were you tempted? You were like, oh, maybe I'll watch it. It's got some good people in it.
Yeah, maybe. Like, I like the cast and stuff, so yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, no, it's a fun movie. I saw it in the cinema. I enjoyed it very much. It's a follow up to the Jason Segel one, but like, it goes into a wackier place, I think, deliberately, because that's what you have to do with a sequel like that. Anyway, I have one other quick note. I just really love the last line of the movie, which is, if you liked this, you should read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Oh, I do have a tiny other thing, just very quickly. Michael Caine, not much of a singer, is he? Michael Caine. He gets away with it.
But the leads never are they?
Yeah.
That's okay.
And also, another tiny note, Scrooge, not the brightest. Who was this wretched man? Come on, dude. You know.
Oh, I think he knows. I think he's in denial. In
yeah,
denial at that point.
I think that's what it is too, but I did enjoy chuckling when he said who was this wretched man. I was like, you're supposed to be smart, buddy.
Yeah.
You know. I also love the touch at the end of him saying Merry Christmas to Gonzo and Rizzo. Like, no one in the movie has interacted with them really the whole time. Like, they've been pretty much ignored as narrators. I like that he wishes them Merry Christmas towards the end. I think that's delightful.
Yeah, because I interpreted it as like, I don't think he could see them all along. I interpreted it as his eyes are open, he's let joy in, and now he can see them.
Yeah, definitely one way. I mean, I hadn't really thought too much about that, but yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the practicalities of Gonzo being Charles Dickens, the omniscient storyteller, is a bit, don't think about that too much. Do you know what I mean?
No, but especially because then they get hit continuously throughout the movie, which is a very good running bit.
Yes, yeah. Them being on window ledges that then get opened is very funny. Yeah. I also really like the running joke that he knows everything that's going to happen in the story, which means that he could have easily avoided many of those.
Yeah.
Shall we do some triv, Chris? Shall we blast through some triv? There's not a huge amount for this one, but
let's do it.
We'll do it.
Let's triv it up.
I'm gonna give you some trivia. So this was the first major Muppet project.
Did you nearly forget to do that then?
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe not so much to forget that I was so eager to be like, let's do it. Let's do the triv. I went to start the triv and then remembered, oh yeah, but I have to do the thing, and then did it. So sort of.
Okay.
But only it was more that it wasn't that I forgot to do it. More that I was just so ready. I was in trivia mode rather than in intro for trivia mode. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
So I did let's give you some trivia, basically in the tone I was going to read the first piece of trivia in.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll forgive.
I let myself down. It's fine. I'll do it better next week, I promise. So this was obviously as we talked about, the first major Muppet project after creator Jim Henson's death. The role of Kermit the Frog was then handed down to Steve Whitmire, who'd been training under him anyway, so was, somewhat prepared. Wasn't like... the way that this has always worked, and this has been the same for like the Looney Tunes and other iconic characters, the company will have a guy that's their voice of that character, and they are that voice for that character for maybe 10, 20 years, but during that time they will train up successors for when they choose to stop doing it, or if they pass away or anything like that. There was one guy that was the voice of Elmo for a very, very long period of time. Don't Google him. The voice of Mickey has had 2 or 3 very, very iconic eras, when different people have voiced Mickey. Same with Bugs Bunny. This happens, right? So this has been standard. There have been 3, I think, at this point, major voices for Kermit. Just off the top of my head, that could be wrong. It might be 4, but so there's the Jim Henson era, the Steve Whitmire era, and then there's the guy that does it at the moment, whose name I always forget. He's very good though. This was his time to take over because Jim Henson had sadly passed away, probably sooner than he wanted. And apparently he was very nervous about taking over such an iconic character as Kermit. Don't blame him. Apparently, the night before he went in to record Kermit's songs for the movie, he had a dream where he met Henson in a hotel lobby and had confessed to him that he was unsure about doing it. But in the dream, Henson reassured him that the feeling would pass, and after waking up, he felt confident and went and did the part. I think that's delightful, because even though I don't believe the spirit of Jim Henson spoke to him, I think that was his subconscious telling him Jim would be proud and Jim would know to tell you that you'll be fine. You know, that was his memories of Jim Henson correctly predicting how Jim Henson would have felt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, it's a really lovely story.
Yeah, and I just like the idea that, like, you know, they always say, like, you know, you're when you're gone, you live on in those who remember you, and this is an example of that. This is someone who remembered him well enough to know what he would have said to him in that moment, and that it said it will be fine, and that he was ready to do it, and that was what he wanted and needed to hear. So perfect, love that story. The very earliest plans for this were that it would be a television special. And that's the stage in which Miss Piggy, Scooter, and Gonzo were going to be the ghosts. Once they were actually doing it as a feature film, you know, they were making adjustments anyway. As Richard Hunt, the voice of Scooter, had died, they needed to automatically change it anyway. And, you know, it all just sort of ended up falling into the place it fell. Would you like to hear some alternate casting for Scrooge?
Nope. Michael Caine's role. Don't even worry about it.
Oh, I've got a corker though. You do need to hear one of them.
No, I will hear it. Yeah,
I know. The names in general, I agree with you. It's like no one would ever have done this better. Doesn't matter. There's one particular, only because it's connected to a story that's fucking mental.
Yeah, go for
So
it.
very quickly, the names in question were David Hemmings, Ron Moody, Peter O'Toole, David Warner, and George Carlin. Bob Hoskins was also considered for the role, but production was concerned Hoskins was too short. Funnily enough, Hoskins also missed out on Angels in the Outfield because of his height. So poor Hoskins missed out a couple of times. Here's the mad one, Chris. Producers, so not necessarily the cast and crew, but the producers really wanted Jack Lemmon to play Scrooge. I do love Jack Lemmon. Jack Lemmon's an absolute legend. Lemmon wanted to play Kermit. Eventually, the producers decided Jack Lemmon was out of his mind and cast Michael Caine. That's fucking
Which
insane.
isn't the wrong decision.
No, it's definitely not the wrong decision. That is 100% the correct decision. So apparently, Caine had missed out on The Muppet Show in the 70s and was very upset about this. So The Muppet Show had been shot in the UK, for those who don't know. And for anyone who's really unfamiliar with The Muppets, the basic premise of The Muppet Show was they're putting on a variety show, and there'd be a guest each week who was going to perform on their variety show, both for the television audience and for an audience sat in front of the stage. But the show would be a mixture of things happening on the stage and things happening backstage that presumably the audience weren't seeing, wink, you know, that kind of thing. So every week it had a big celebrity guest, very much like Sesame Street, how there's always a celebrity, a real person mixed in with the Muppets. Many, many people had done it, and many friends of Michael Caine had done it. Roger Moore, John Cleese, Peter Sellers, even Sylvester Stallone listed here. I didn't realise Sylvester Stallone and Michael Caine were tight, but apparently they were good friends and he was very frustrated but he didn't get to do it. They had all apparently told Michael Caine how much fun it had been to do it. And that it had given them extra kudos for children, and that it was just like, you know, a big deal to do it. And he had not been able to shoot, and this is fucking my favourite part of this story, because he was unable to live in the UK at the time. He was in tax exile in the US, which I'm pretty sure basically means he couldn't go back to the UK to avoid paying taxes. So in the 70s, he couldn't shoot the show. So, when they greenlight the movie in 91, he was back in the UK, and he heard they were shooting it, and he basically badgered his agent and made his agent harass Henson Productions until they agreed to meet him. I cannot tell you how much joy it brings me to know Michael Caine wanted to do this.
Yeah.
because I think it's easy to imagine him sort of going, all right, how much money is it? I'm working with the puppets. Okay, I am a classically trained actor, Do I need... Is this for my career? I need to do this. Okay. There's a version of this that makes sense that's that, right? And that makes me sad, because the movie brings me joy. It makes me so happy to know that even though Michael Caine played this very seriously and took this as a legitimate acting role, on top of that, he wanted to do it. He was excited to do it. That just makes me happy. Little things, I suppose. Apparently, he didn't realise until about halfway through production that this was Brian Henson's directorial debut. And I think that's very, very telling.
Yeah, absolutely, because of how great a job he did.
Yeah. Caine apparently was extremely impressed with the professionalism and the craftsmanship and the knowledge and the all the stuff that Brian Henson brought to the film. The Ghost of Christmas Past was done by making a special puppet that would not soak up water, that was then operated inside of a big tank of water and then green screened into the movie to give it the impression of floating. It is an impressive effect, terrifying as it is. So it's cool that they did that. We already talked about this a little bit, but Rolf the dog, the character whom Jim Henson felt closest to, had played an important part in all Muppet productions until this point, but as a suitable replacement voice actor had not yet been found. The dog appears in just a simple, non-speaking cameo role. Bill Beretta, who was the subsequent voice of Rolf, didn't take on the role until 1996. So there you go. There are two songs that are on the soundtrack that were cut prior to production. So they basically the way that you usually film a musical is you do all the music months before you shoot any footage. So you go into a studio, record the songs, then they get all mastered, and then you can play them back on set. So between the recording sessions for the music and actually starting production on the movie, they'd adjusted the script to cut the two songs. But one was called Room in Your Heart, and it was sung by Dr. Honeydew and Beaker as the charity workers, or Portly Man number 1 and 2. The other one was called Chairman of the Board, and was sung by Sam the Eagle as Scrooge's headmaster. As both were recorded, they did actually end up on the soundtrack for the movie, despite not being in the finished film. So they're still out there for people who want to hear what they sound like.
Nice.
Oh,
very nice.
I think they were just cut for pacing reasons, it looks like. Does it say that here? They were dropped from the script before the filming started to help with the flow of the story. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so just cut for pacing reasons. Brian Henson has specifically clarified that Rizzo and Gonzo are in the movie narrating because he wanted to incorporate the narration and prose of the original novel. Genius choice. Interesting one here, series trademark. At the conclusion of the song One More Sleep, Bob Cratchit, played by Kermit the Frog, is seen standing alone in the street, and a shooting star can be seen streaking across the sky. In many, but not all, of the Muppets movies, a shooting star goes across the sky at some point when Kermit is on screen. So that's like a recurring visual theme that they kept. This one's weird, right? And whoever went to the trouble of making this happen, I do love you, but it's fucking weird. Right. So, apparently if you look closely in one of the crowd sequences, in one of the background shots, there is a Muppet lobster hanging out of a basement window. Apparently, this is a reference to a famous Charles Dickens line that says, like bad lobster in a dark cellar, which is one of his weirder turns of phrase, in my opinion. But that's why there's a lobster hanging out of a basement window.
That's a nice reference, though. It's a nice nod.
Sure. Yeah. A bit odd, but sure. For no real obvious reason, but just a weird detail, all of the bookkeeping rats in Scrooge's office are left-handed. Not sure why, but they are.
Nice.
Those rats are usually Rizzo's family in other movies and Muppets content. I thought that was very funny the way they did that. Because obviously rats procreate like crazy. They're famously big families, crazy large crowd sizes. So it's always been a funny joke in the Muppets that Rizzo has a big family, and the idea that they just use them here to fill out the offices for Scrooge is a fun premise, and I appreciated that. Let's see. Oh yeah, we forgot to talk about this. So we talked earlier about how Jacob and Robert Marley tell Scrooge to leave comedy to the Bears, which is obviously a reference to Statler and Waldorf often heckling Fozzie Bear. They then do that later in the movie, because we then cut to Fozzie as Scrooge's old boss, and he's giving a speech at the Christmas party, and who's heckling him from the rafters? Statler and Waldorf as the Marleys. Perfect choice. Very good. We like that. Oh, this one's great. Miss Piggy makes her first appearance 53 minutes into the movie. She has said publicly in interviews that one of the only reasons she accepted such a small role was because her on-screen husband was portrayed by Kermit. So it's just an excuse to be with Kermit.
That's nice.
Yeah, I like that. I do love it when they interview the actual Muppets for stuff like this. It's so good. Like the various interviews with Miss Piggy and Kermit around any movie release they've ever done, really, but like particularly around the Jason Segel movie and Most Wanted were very, very entertaining to watch. Yeah, particularly when they didn't send Kermit, but they sent the guy that plays the Kermit lookalike in the movie to some of them. That was very funny. So it was Kermit, but he sound like this. It's very strange. There's a really good interview with Ricky Gervais and that version of Kermit that just cracks me up every time I see it, because Gervais just cannot. He doesn't know what to do in the situation. It's very funny. In an interview, speaking of interviews with Muppets, in an interview, Kermit the Frog was asked about this movie, and he said the most important piece of acting advice he ever got was from Michael Caine, and it was on the set of this movie, and the advice was never blink, because of course Muppets can't. That's good. That's real good.
I love how seriously they take that. Like we've already said on here, I just love how seriously, like, you know, the Muppets Are the Actors thing is taken consistently.
It's so good. It's one of my favorites. So apparently, according to the creators, during they mentioned this in the commentary of the movie that's out on the DVD, when they did a test screening, several children were confused and asked at the end what the bookkeepers had done wrong. Because, of course, what they receive at the end of the movie is coal, and what do you get when you've been bad at Christmas?
No.
It apparently
That's nice.
It slipped the mind of the writers and producers of the film that kids might associate the coal with, you know, them being bad and not getting what they wanted from Santa, and forgetting the obviously original scene that sets up they want the coal.
That's very good.
It's adorable. The minds of children, right? So, let's talk about box office very briefly. This is not a huge hit in its initial run. It did well. It made its money back, that's for sure. So it was a $12 million budget, which I think is actually very, very reasonable for a feature film. It only
for what it achieved, like logistically, like
Yeah.
working around Muppets and stuff. That's
Yeah, you would imagine that was very expensive. I think at this point, the good thing about what Henson had set up was it was a team. You didn't assemble people to make a Muppets movie. The Muppets production team exists. What movie are they making next? Do you know what I mean? Like, the cast and crew were the same on all of these things, right? With the exception of when people would pass away or they would move on. If you were an employee at the Henson Company, you worked on the next movie. So you don't have to rig a new set. They've got the studios. They physically have a studio space they already use. You don't have to hire new set designers. They have set designers. You know what I mean? Like, it's when you're making a Muppets movie, that is coming with it, and that probably has a huge effect on keeping costs down. Massive. I don't know how much of that $12 million went to Michael Caine, but like probably a good chunk of it too. That's what's also funny about this. But $12 million is a good budget. Means that really the movie didn't have to make a lot to be profitable, which is really lucky because unfortunately this movie came out alongside Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, and as a result, coming out the same Christmas, only made $33 million in the box office in its original run. Now, on a $12 million budget, that's profit, baby, gravy. No one's complaining about that. And obviously, the movie has continued to be beloved and reshown every Christmas in a million different countries. And what we just talked earlier, and at the end of last week's episode, about how much it's being shown even now to this day at like the Prince Charles Theatre in London and many other places. It's become a Christmas classic, even if it only made a modest profit in its original theatrical run. Between home video releases, Netflix, Disney Plus, licensing to all these different countries, screenings, for the last sort of 30 years, this has been a huge success. I think everyone will agree. Because everything after theatrical release has been pure profit. So that's just free money that the studio are just constantly pulling in. So,
yeah, and it's I'd imagine incredibly consistent as well.
Right. Yep. You can probably just go, oh yeah, Christmas is coming. We're gonna make this. We're gonna make X amount of money out of just Muppets existing. Yeah, 100%, 100%. So yeah. Very quickly, we don't have Cars Exist this week, so I said to Nadia, "What should I do?" We couldn't think of anything together, and then we were talking about how I'd found a really weird article going into the science and logic of what illness Tiny Tim has, based on his socioeconomic position, the time frame where he lived. And there are 3 leading theories. So welcome, Chris, to our new segment, Diseases Exist.
I can't think of a noise for that.
No. Oh, I feel sick. No, it's...
Okay, yeah. Right, introduce it again.
Right. Welcome to our new segment, Diseases Exist. That's great. I loved it. Good work. There are 3 leading theories on what Tiny Tim has based on his position. The most common is very simply rickets. Disease caused by the lack of vitamin D that was common in the 1800s, particularly because of the prevalence of the use of coal and the lack of understanding of how that affected the environment. Obviously, coal creates smog. Smog blocks out sunlight, but it particularly blocks out your ability to get vitamin D out of the sunlight. So a lot of people were vitamin D deficient in this era of London, led to a lot of cases of rickets. Very, very likely contender. Another contender, although I'm less personally, I don't think this is it, because I'm pretty sure the survival rate on this was nil point. And at the end, we're like, hey, and Tiny Tim survived. But I'm pretty sure, I don't think he'd have survived tuberculosis, which is the other often cited. Medical people know better more than me, and I will say I did genuinely find multiple very detailed medical professionals analysing both the original text and subsequent adaptations to try and identify what's wrong with Tiny Tim. And, they know better than I do. Apparently, TB, tuberculosis, is the next most likely, very prevalent in London in this era, so very likely. I think that maybe even the least likely of these 3, but definitely an option. A condition called cerebral palsy that causes muscle weakness. And that actually, you end up with a limp like that, which he has because he has a crutch. And this actually is a condition that can be deeply worsened by rickets and a vitamin D deficiency. So yeah, one of those 2. Wasn't that joyful for Christmas, Chris? Diseases exist.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone. I just couldn't think of what else to do. I think overall thoughts. Look, it's probably. I was going to ask the question. I forgot to do this. Is, on the scale of most Christmassy, is this the most Christmassy Christmas movie we've covered for this podcast? Because it's definitely more Christmassy than Jingle All the Way. It's probably more Christmassy. Well, it's definitely more Christmassy than a movie like a Die Hard, which is a Christmas movie, but isn't necessarily the most Christmassy Christmas movie. It's certainly more Christmassy than Home Alone.
Yeah, I think the only contenders potentially are Nativity and It's a Wonderful Life. But even like the majority of It's a Wonderful Life isn't that Christmassy. It's just like an iconic Christmas film for people. I think this probably is the most Christmassy of. Is it though? Because then again, I suppose there's flashbacks and stuff in this that aren't, set at Christmas. And stuff.
And I guess there is the Santa Claus as well, which is very Christmassy.
Oh yeah. I think the Santa Claus the Santa Claus, the entire thing is set at Christmas at the North Pole. Oh no, I suppose even the Santa Claus, there's a period where it's not,
between the two
rest
Christmases.
of the year.
Yeah.
Nativity's pretty damn Christmassy.
All three of those movies give you the warm and fuzzies for Christmas, I think. But I think for me, this is the one that most evokes the emotional feelings of and vibes of Christmas to me, I think. But I guess it depends how you want to decipher it. Do you want to didactically, break up the script into its components and go, what percentage of Christmas is this movie, or do you just go feelings?
We can't do that, Dan, because then it's the Santa Claus 3.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I hate that that's true, but that's true. So yeah, I think it's probably this. I think you had a really good shout though with Nativity. I'd forgotten Nativity as a contender in this, but that is a really really Christmassy movie. Yeah, I think it's definitely.
I think for you, it's the most Christmas because it's your. You know what I mean? In many ways, it's your Christmas movie.
Yeah. I think I'm not sure of this, but I reckon if you go back through Christmases. The three movies I've watched the most at Christmas, and one of them is not because of me, because it's a favourite of Nadia's, but the three movies I watch the most regularly at Christmas are Muppet Christmas Carol, Die Hard, and Elf. Die Hard and Muppet Christmas Carol probably alternate, I reckon. I said I'll watch it every year to 2 years. I wonder if in the years I don't watch this, I watch Die Hard. Because I feel like I watch Die Hard mostly sort of every year or every other year, basically, for Christmas. So, yeah, I wonder if that's what's happening. And I'm not realising that's what's happening. This year we're going to do a big Wallace and Gromit binge up to the lead up to Christmas, Chris. I'm very excited about it. I've acquired the entire Wallace and Gromit back catalogue. I don't know why I associate Wallace and Gromit with Christmas. I just do. Always have. Maybe it's when it used to be on TV as a kid.
I think it aired a lot over Christmas in the UK, didn't it?
Yeah.
Like they put it on.
We got everything from A Matter of Loaf and Death right through to the Wrong Trousers and The Moon's Made of Cheese. No, I know it's called A Grand Day Out, but all of the I can't wait. We're gonna watch the whole back catalogue. I know it's not a lot, but we're getting excited for the new one this Christmas, which I'm so excited about. I'm more excited about that than I am anything else on TV this Christmas, including a brand new Doctor Who special. But there's new Wallace and Gromit, please.
There's a lot this year. Presumably our Christmas episode of Nothing But Static, where we break down the Christmas TV guide, is already out. Go to that feed to check it out there. But yeah, there's that Lee Mack Chris McCloud special thing. I don't know if it's a series or a movie. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the trailer for that. We might do it for Trailers Be Trailering. It looks insane. It looks like every Christmas story ever rammed together.
We need to give context for that. On our other podcast, Nothing But Static, where we review TV shows, we have a small segment we sometimes do called Trailers Be Trailering, where we just review some trailers we happen to have seen that are for TV shows. We should clarify.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Nothing But Static sometimes bleeds into our other podcasts, and we don't always think to clarify what we're talking about.
That's fair. It has been confirmed. I don't know if you've seen, Dan, but it is confirmed that James Acaster's new special, Heckler's Welcome, is getting a television airing on HBO.
Very good.
So there's all sorts. There's
you know what? I knew that. I saw the trailer. I literally saw the trailer like 2 days ago. I did know that. I knew it, then forgot it, and because there's a lot going on in my life right now. I found that out, got excited, completely forgot about it. Then got excited again just now because you told me. It looks great. I saw the trailer. It looked very good. I thought it was a very well edited trailer as well. So yeah.
So there's a lot of telly to watch.
But yeah, I think for as Christmas stuff goes, I think Muppet's Christmas Carol is a full on Christmas masterpiece. I think everyone who worked on it should be very proud of themselves, and will continue to be proud of themselves because they will live on forever through this movie. I honestly think there's a reasonable chance there's a point in time, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, where Michael Caine is mostly remembered for this movie, rather than The Italian Job or the Dark Knight trilogy or various eras of Michael Caine where he's also done extraordinarily good work. This is something that's going to be completely timeless about this movie, I think. For sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think there's a real realistic possibility of that. So yeah, good time. Love it. Yeah, absolute classic. Very little to complain about. Oh, one thing I didn't say, sorry, I needed to clarify this very quickly. While I did criticize the songs for not necessarily, some of the songs for not being necessarily as catchy as they could have been, or as memorable, earwormy, however you want to phrase that. I do think the score is spectacular. I want to make it very clear. When I talk about the songs, I mean the songs. The music, the score, the undertone, that undersits the scenes is beautiful and brilliantly done and perfect. So yeah, just wanted to clarify.
And
that.
some of the songs, like Marley and Marley, sorry. Not
Marley and Me will be very different.
The Jennifer Aniston, which is a film I would maybe consider doing one day. Like, I've seen that film once and remember it being bizarre. But yeah, Marley and Marley is a great song.
Yeah, the Marley and Marley. Ooh, yeah, that's great. I think there are, like I said, like 3, maybe 4 really great songs in this, and then it's like a bunch of songs that you're just like, oh yeah, that one's in here. Forgot about that one. Good. It's funny in the moment, but like, yeah, there are a few that definitely the sort of thing where you don't remember it exists until you're watching it again, and you're like, oh yeah, this song, right? But I do like the introduction of Scrooge as well. Here comes Mr. Humbug, here comes Mr. Scrooge. That's a good song too.
Yes, also very good.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're disproving our own criticism here as we go.
True.
I'll definitely be humming. It feels like it feels like Christmas for the next week, But anyway,
it did, like you say, it did. I did. It's November, but I did feel very festive watching it and finishing it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So big recommend. If you haven't seen it already,
recommend.
You should definitely should see it. It's what holds up completely. It's as good as it ever was. I'm delighted that Chris enjoyed it too. The big question: would it enter your Christmas considerations next year, or in maybe 2 years' time? Would you think about sticking this on at Christmas, or do you if you're in the mood?
Potentially, yeah. I don't know if it would become part of the Die Hard Santa Claus roster. But I would definitely watch it again. And I think it's very good family viewing. So potentially in the future, it could be an easy win for that. If the situation is there for that to be a thing.
I think that's a really good point. Actually, this is another one of those movies that, like, at Christmas you round at your parents, or like your cousins are over, or you're with your grandparents or whatever, and it's like, how do you find something in a world where everything is very catered now, and the TV shows you like will absolutely not be the TV shows your family like. Same with movies. In that world, a movie like this that is going to have broad appeal. Yes, please.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be. Whereas before, I'd have probably been like if I'd have seen it on the TV guide. Do you know what I mean? I'd have been like, But like, I think now I'd be more inclined to be like, oh yeah, well, let's give that a watch then. Let's put that on.
And I guess the very last question, very quickly, do you think it's deserving of its reputation and its status that it has? Because correct me if I'm wrong. You seemed a little surprised last week when you realised how much they were showing at the Prince Charles, how big of a following it seems to have had or developed.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely was. Yeah. But the bit, I think just because it was so dominant compared to everything else, I'd have expected Elf, It's a Wonderful Life, you know what I mean, those films to match the Home Alone, even to match the volume. It was so weighted in favour of Muppet's Christmas Carol that surprised me. But yeah, it absolutely deserves its status as an amazing Christmas movie for sure.
Great. Well, there you go. Where are we going next is the next big question, I guess. So we're talking about New Year's Eve. I think it's coming out, the podcast in question. So what is this? Is
Yeah, and I haven't, because we talked about maybe Love Actually, but I kind of, the way I've seen Love Actually a few times, and the way I'd prefer to watch Love Actually is for it to just sort of wash over me.
Honestly, the way I would prefer to watch Love Actually is to not watch Love Actually, so I'm also on board with the plan of not choosing it.
I don't want to sit there knowing, not that I particularly love the film or would particularly defend it, it's got an awful lot of flaws. It's just not the sort of film that I, want to watch knowing I've got to listen to 2 hours of, especially because I'll have no defense. You'll be like, it's bad for this reason. So I'll be like, yeah, I agree. And you'll be like, well, do you like it? And I'll be like, not particularly. I don't particularly like or dislike it. There are some storylines that are okay. And also, it doesn't fit with my sort of my thing this year of just wanting to choose, classic, what I consider to be classic rewind reviews, which isn't a theme that you need to speak to, but so far all of our choices have kind of fitted the classic and rewind review.
I have already decided what I'm choosing after this next one, which is very unusual. I usually decide, minutes before I say. Like, I'll maybe have a vague idea of one or two films I've been thinking of, and mostly because I'm like, just had the urge to watch them. It's occurred, and I've gone, I can do that for a rewind review. But there's one movie that I'm like, I think it's time that we're going to cover this one, and I have no idea if you've even seen it, so it's not a big famous classic, but it is very, very in the wheelhouse of what a rewind review can and usually is. Can be.
And this choice is a movie that I loved as a kid. It doesn't have a good reputation.
That's
it's
fun.
not considered to be. But I really enjoyed it, like, as a kid. I don't know. I know you will have seen it. I don't know how much. It's 1994, so it's right in the wheelhouse. And I think the fun thing about this choice is it's a choice that makes both of us go, oh yeah, fucking let's do that, but isn't necessarily on a list of, like, we must get to movies. So, Dan, it is time to say Yabba Dabba Doo.
Oh no!
And go to 1994's The Flintstones.
I'm so
Which,
excited.
ironically,
honestly, when you started saying 1994, I genuinely, my brain went two ways. It went The Mask, and it went Three Ninjas. Although actually, that might have been Three Ninjas Kick Back that came out in 94. But fuck me, yeah, the Flintstones movie, John Goodman, Rick Moranis.
Let's do it. And we got there. I think it's a great choice. I'm really pleased with the choice. But actually, ironically, I got there slightly because of this. Because on the bell, I think it was like Christmas Stories Wikipedia, and it had a list of, and there was a Flintstones Christmas Carol TV movie about them putting on a production of it. And it made me be like, oh yeah, the Flintstones. And then I was like, oh yeah, fuck it, like, forget Love Actually, forget any of that. The Flintstones is the choice, because like I was a big fan of that movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I can remember like the opening in the sky and all of that sort of stuff.
I know.
Yeah,
I remember that movie
intimately.
I'm pretty sure it's a movie where the storyline revolves. It's a kids movie that the storyline revolves around embezzlement. So like, I'm very. The idea, like, I'm remembering the plot of that movie and being like, that cannot be real. So I cannot wait to see because I remember the plot of that movie, and I could be wrong, don't quote me on this, but memory serves, the plot of that movie is Rob Lowe tricks Fred Flintstone, John Goodman, to, by pretending he's the boss of the company, so he signs a bunch of documents, so he can steal a bunch of money and leave Fred guilty of like the crime, like it's an embezzlement scam, and he does it by seducing him, I think, with this other lady that's his partner. The whole thing does not sound like a kids movie, and I am fascinated to see if any of that is one, true, but two, holds up.
Is it definitely Rob Lowe? I thought it was the guy from Twin Peaks. I might be wrong. I don't know.
It could, honestly, it really could be. Actually, that's a good point. It could be. In my head, Rob Lowe played all of the 90s skeezers in movie, because I always think of Wayne's World, 1 second, you might be right, actually. Film 1990, what was it? 1994, wasn't it? 94. Let's quickly double check that, because I think you might be right, and I need to correct, because I can picture both. Oh my god, Halle Berry's character in that movie is called Sharon Stone.
I can't wait, because it's also, like I say,
yeah, you're right. It's Kyle MacLachlan. You're absolutely right. It's not Rob Lowe. It's Kyle MacLachlan. You're correct.
What I love about it is when I saw, like, because obviously that was referring to the anime, but when I saw that, and it was like, oh god, because it's not a film that we've talked about. I think it might have come up like when we talked about Rick Moranis. At some point we will.
Yeah.
But I like that you reacted exactly the same way I reacted and wanted to react. Of, oh yeah, let's fucking do the Flintstones.
It's because it's famously bad, but like I loved it as a kid. But I think about that plot and I'm like, yeah, that's a bad movie. That sounds like a bad movie.
And I haven't. I don't know about you, but I haven't watched it with any form of adult critical eye, or even like older teenager critical eye. I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
I don't think I have either. I think at absolute latest, last time I watched it, 15? Probably
Yeah.
the last time I saw this movie. Which I think, considering how old I am and how long that's been, the fact, if I've remembered that plot correctly, that movie made a mark on me for whatever reason.
Yeah, vivid memories of like the tests being swapped, because that's the other thing, isn't it? Like Barney and Fred, like I'm pretty sure they fall out.
Yep. Yep. And I remember Fred getting arrogant because he's got lots of money and them going to clubs, and there's a scene in a club where they're playing Love Shack in the background. I remember a surprising amount of this movie, considering, and I remember the final sequence with the kids tied up on the sort of conveyor belt system. I remember so much of this fucking movie, but I can't wait to see how it plays out. To actually sit down and watch it again. I'm very excited. It's a great choice. Well done. I think genuinely, Chris. I think just a little moment for a.
Thank you.
One man clapping always sounds
really
sarcastic,
pleased.
but I do genuinely. This is a sincere clap. I want that on record.
Yeah,
Right,
I'm very
well,
pleased.
With that in mind, everyone,
Excited.
thank you all for listening. I mean, mate, I'm so excited. I've already got the movie queued up. I'm gonna watch it right now.
Yeah, oh mate, I would love to. Like I genuinely, because I think there's a lot going on at the moment. And Dan and I had we just need to, we need to make sure the Christmas ones are done. And now I'm like, right, what you got next week?
Yeah, when can we do the Flintstones movie? Oh god, I'm looking at the poster.
Totally.
God, even this poster is iconic to me. I like this movie was a big deal. I remember the marketing. I remember like how excited people were for it. I remember like the vignettes on like TV this morning. Like people were talking about the movie and the special effects and how they recreated Dino and like, holy hell! Oh my god, I'm so in.
That poster's really, because that's one of those movies where it's like that poster was the poster. Do you know what I mean? It was the poster. It was the VHS cover. It was like. Yeah, in my mind, just very iconic.
Yeah, it is 100%. All right, well, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you come back. As always, if you want to hear that in a week early, you can hear it now. You can hear it right. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you can hear us discuss 1994's The Flintstones by heading over to our Patreon, patreon.com/nothing-but-static, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get access to episodes of this podcast 1 week ahead of their normal release. And we'd love you for it. So please feel free to do that because that's going to be a fun one, I think. Also gives you access to our Discord and some other benefits like bonus podcasts that we've put up in the past. There are more coming. Next year, I think we're going to at least get back on the one of my favorite sort of mildly abandoned podcasts for the time being, which is the Nothing But Lyrics, which just remains one of the funnest things we do. There's like 8 or 9 episodes already up if you want to go listen to those if you haven't already. But if you have any thoughts on any of this, mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk, or you can head over to youtube.com/nothingbutstaticuk, where you can subscribe and like on the video or the podcast posted there. It's not a video as such, but the podcast is posted there. And there's obviously a comment section as well where we get thoughts. We can see your thoughts. So if you have anything you want to say on Muppet's Christmas Carol, something we missed, feel free to jump in, tell us there, or something we got wrong, something you disagreed with us on. Feel free to jump in and let us know. Fun civil discussion, always encouraged. I think that's everything, though. Yeah, but thanks everyone for listening. We love you for that. Stick with us because I don't think I'm pleased with the choice after this one, but I don't think my choice will elicit the excitement in Chris that Chris's choice is exhibiting me. Because I think Chris, it sounds like Chris and I have the exact same relationship to the Flintstones movie. I'm not convinced Chris has the same relationship to the movie that we're doing the week after. But I think Chris will fully agree with me that it is absolutely prime rewind reviews material. So I'll tease that.
Nice.
And you can come back next week and listen to the end of that podcast to find out what we're covering the week after. Or if you're listening to this in the far-flung future, so look at your feed. Just see what episodes come next. You can see.
Take a look.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the most we've ever done excitement for the next choice. But I've just remembered, Dan, they recreate the theme tune. They recreate the opening titles in live action.
They do. Yeah, they do. It's how the movie opens. Oh, it's going to be good. I'm excited. How is it a long movie? What's the length of it? Is it like
No, it's got to be like 90 minutes, surely.
That's
it
my
can't
thinking.
be long.
That's my thinking, but like, there's also a part of me that's like, is it? Let me check. Yeah, an hour and 31 minutes. Yeah, it's about right.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, thanks everyone for listening. We love you. Come back in a week's time for that to hear us, to see if we are that excited, or the other possibility, very deflated by a terrible movie. Yep. Remember
That's
this
possible.
feeling fondly, because it may not last. But thanks everyone for listening. Oh God, I've got a 19-hour flight coming up this week, Chris. I could torture myself doubly if I wanted and watch this movie while on that flight. Actually, no, I don't think I could, because I don't think I could deal with the knowledge that everyone around me is going to be like, is that guy watching 1994's The Flintstones movie?
like people on the train that time looking at me being like, was he watching The Cable Guy?
Yeah.
At like at 7 in the morning on a train.
It's one thing, mate, to bring an iPad so you can, watch a movie of your own rather than the in-flight entertainment. But really? That one? That's the one you're doing? Thanks everyone for listening. I'm going to pass over to Chris, who ends this. Oh, please put me out of my misery. That's funny.
My name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.